These are a few titles from Usborne Books and More that can support your child in language arts. I'm going to start with the Write Your Own Mystery and Suspense Stories book. Now, this is part of a series, and there are several Write Your Own Stories books, but my daughter loves mystery and suspense stories, and so we're going to use this one. Now, she's already written some in it, but we're actually going to erase that because this is going to be part of her curriculum this year in homeschool. And she is going to be doing all of these little writing activities and ultimately writing her own story, which she's really excited about. I have been very impressed with the organization of this book and the elements that are taught within it. I was a high school English and writing teacher for about a decade, and several of the elements taught here are things that I taught. And this is for, I would say, upper elementary to, because I love this, like, speech tags. This is something I directly taught. It's something a lot of young writers don't know how to do on their own. You kind of have to be taught how to do it. So it's, I would say, upper elementary, middle school, maybe even through 9th grade. And then obviously there's a lot of space in here to actually do the writing. There's small little writing activities with writing prompts that will kind of teach you how to do and help you experiment with different elements of writing. Such a cool little book. Okay, moving on we're going to move on to Shakespeare now. My 3 Shakespeare books from Usborne, I just love them so much. I'm going to start with The Sea Inside the World of Shakespeare. And it's one of the Lift the Flap books, which if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I'm a huge fan of the Lift the Flap book. So it starts with Shakespeare's London, to get a picture of what London was like. The Playhouse, of course the Globe. What it was like backstage. This is a really cool one. The royal performance, performing in front of Queen Elizabeth, and then later, of course, James Stewart. And then the different types of tales, the tragedies. And it gives, we have Macbeth, Hamlet, King Lear, Romeo and Juliet, and Julius Caesar. It's mentioned here. And the comedies, Midsummer, Twelfth Night, Much Ado, romances, As You Like It. And I love that they even mentioned the problem plays. I thought this was pretty impressive for this to be mentioned in a children's book. And how, you know, there's a few of the plays that don't quite fit into the categories. Merchant of Venice is the most famous one. It's dark and even tragic in a way, but still ends with the wedding. So is it a comedy? Is it a tragedy? We're not sure. And there's no real deaths at the end. And then telling us a little bit about the context, the historical context, the Wars of the Roses, a little bit about the monarchs of the time, and then a teeny bit about the sonnets. I just think it's great. Moving on, this is a little bit silly, but kind of awesome at the same time. Okay, you remember Where's Waldo? Well, this is Where's Will? And here's what's great. It's his plays that he's lost inside of and that you have to find him. As You Like It, Julius Caesar, Twelfth Night, Macbeth, Tempest, Much Ado, Antony and Cleopatra, Midsummer, Romeo and Juliet, and Hamlet. And so first you get the summary of his play, short little summary, and then this is the set. It's the setting of the play. And then you find Will in his own play. Isn't that cool? I mean, so it really is such a great supplement for Shakespeare study. I haven't even shown this to the girls yet, but what I'm thinking is that as I'm reading some of the plays to my children, especially my youngest, my 6-year-old, she already loves search and finds. So this is a way to engage her. She will still be listening to Shakespeare, but that she can be looking for Shakespeare. I've already found him. I think that's him right there. in the setting of the actual play. This it's 12th Night, which is the one we just read. I just think it's super cool. Okay, and then last, I've talked about this book in my stories, and I've posted it on my Instagram several times because as a former English teacher, I just have to say, and someone who just loved teaching Shakespeare for years and studying Shakespeare in grad school, that I've been so impressed with this book. I've read several lovely paraphrased narrative versions of Shakespeare plays to the girls. I mean, there's the kind of classic ones that people are familiar with, but I have to say, I think this is so well written. I particularly like, I have to mention this first before I turn the page, this cast list that's at the beginning of every single play, because it really illustrates for the child the characters. They can look at the cast, remember the names, and see how they relate to one another. There's one, my favorite one is because we just read 12th Night. Let's see, I think it's up here at the beginning. Let's see, yep, I just passed it. Let me find 12th Night, because this was just fabulous. Let me see if I can show you this. So you have the love triangle illustrated, but also, if you look at Viola Cesario, you see how you can kind of split her down the middle, and half of her is a boy, half's a girl? Well, there we go. It's a perfect illustration of how Viola is dressed up in disguise as Cesario. And that several times was something that my daughters looked at to kind of remember what was happening. And they were just kind of fascinated with the illustration too. And to see how the different characters relate to one another. Yeah, so this has just been something we've loved. One more thing I want to mention about it that I've been a fan of is the kind of classic quotable lines, the famous lines that people are familiar with, are in a beautiful script font on the page. You'll find them every few pages at the top or the bottom. You know, that which we call a rose by any other word would smell as sweet. So Romeo would, were he not Romeo called. You know, did my heart love till now, forswear at sight. I mean, you have the ones we know that we have in our mind already. Be not afraid of greatness. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. And so, I mean, this is something I feel like separates it from other narrative versions, even lovely, wonderful ones, that don't have the actual, I mean, Shakespearean language pulled out for those famous, memorable lines. And we've been doing some memory work with Shakespeare, and so this has been great because a lot of times the passages that we are working on to memorize, this was one of them right here, make me a willow cabin at your gate, and call upon my soul within the house, write loyal cantons of condemned love, and sing them loud even to the dead of night. You know, getting in my little Shakespearean mode here. They were the ones that were on the page, so we were working on memorizing them, and we were using the book How to Teach Your Children Shakespeare, and then we would get to that page in the text, and of course it's just this lovely narrative, not the actual Shakespearean play, but it's this narrative version. And then there's the line that they've been working on memorizing right there at the bottom. And that was very affirming that, oh, those are the most famous quotations because it's the one that's pulled out here in the book. So anyway, we've loved this. I highly recommend it. I would even say, if you are an adult and you would love to have, or you've always wanted to have a just engaging, fun, interesting introduction to Shakespeare without the tediness of wading into the text all by yourself, which can be a little tricky if you've never done it before, then this would be, I think it'd be fun for adults as well. I would recommend it all the way through teenage years into adults. Now, of course, ultimately we want to go and read the plays and see the plays because Hey, I'm getting on my soapbox here, aren't I? But the plays were intended to be watched and performed, not necessarily just read, so that's the ultimate goal. So anyway, I think this is a great introduction to Shakespeare that you and your children will love, and if you combine it with these two fun books, then I think it'll be a hit. If you have any questions, I'm at Callie_Sparrow and Lilies on Instagram. Thanks so much.